This webinar today brought to you by GeoBear. I'm Alistair Willis, Marketing Director in the UK, and with me is Craig Dean, our UK Residential Services Director. So we're here today to talk to you largely, and the focus is on our solutions for social housing or residential properties affected by subsidence. So although we do services way beyond that in the infrastructure and commercial sector, this really is a focus on how these solutions work in a residential property. But interesting nonetheless. So we've got Craig that's going to run through these slides for you fairly swiftly today, and there'll be a time for some questions afterwards. So we'll do a Q&A at the end. So I'm going to disappear until the Q&A, and I'll come back and join for that, Craig. So I'll hand over to you now.
Thanks, Alistair. Firstly, good afternoon, and thank you for taking the time to join the webinar this afternoon, which is a little bit of a whistle-top blow of who GeoBear are, what we do, and how we can potentially support yourselves moving forward. Like Alistair did allude to, there will be question and answers at the end. So a little bit of an introduction. My name's Craig Dean. I'm the UK Residential Director that deals with private residential clients who potentially have issues with potentially subsidence, to also insurance partners. We deal with the majority of insurance companies and support them within their endeavours to find solutions to potential issues they're finding with subsidence. Equally find solutions to alternatives from taking trees out to, again, alternative comparison of ground improvement. We also here at GeoBear deal direct with social housing partners, and I will be giving you a couple of case studies of current projects and previous projects that we're working with in that partnership. And the last sector that I manage is the developer side of supporting developers who potentially are having issues again surrounding subsidence. So I'd just like to quickly go over a little bit more of what we will be covering today. So we will be looking at the capabilities of what GeoBear can do and how we can support, and equally how that vision works, equally alongside our Geopolymer. What is Geopolymer? How does it work? How does it react? How many Geopolymers do we have? Our design theory. So how does our design in ground improvement schemes look and work? Again, from clay shrinkage to ground improvement to slab stabilization. Enabling works, what's expected pre-GeoBear treatment, and the importance of triage and understanding the underlying issue that has caused individual projects to fail or have subsidence issues. And lastly, the installation. How does that look in comparison to conventional? How quick is it? You know, how can we help within carbon footprint, and so on and so forth. So a little bit of understanding who GeoBear are. So we're a global leader in non-destructive solutions for foundation and infrastructure settlement, with a pattern of obviously subsidence problems. We're a global business established in 1983 in Finland, and I will go into a little bit more detail regarding that in a second. We were formerly known as Eurotech up until December 2017. So Eurotech originated from a franchise model. Primarily, what we decided here at GeoBear in 2017 was to bring it back in-house. Primarily, that was to ensure level of service was acquired, and nonetheless, GeoBear was born in 2017. Since that was originally in the UK, we have primarily gone to other global areas, which again I'll go into a second. But we do have 3 depots, offices throughout the UK, and again I've talked about the importance of carbon footprint. But we operate from our offices and depots in Wolverhampton, Winchester, and Sandy. We're investing heavily in geographical locations moving forward to again offset and ensure our carbon footprint is achieved. We operate with a full in-house engineering team. We also work with third-party consulting engineers. It depends on the detail of bespoke projects. and we're not going to hide that every project is individual, to understand and triage what the problem is, to then offset and ensure that we're finding the correct solution. Currently, we have continued to deliver and successfully deliver over 250,000 projects. A little bit more insight into that. In the UK alone, we complete in the region of around 15 to 25 projects per week, and we have a full operating model to support that. Going back to how GeoBear was originated, or Eurotech was originated, in Finland in 1983, there was a commercial premises, a warehouse that was suffering from subsidence issues. So at that stage, the alternative, or what the solution was piling or down that kind of method, which would have presented a significant impact to the business. For example, if they had to find another premises and stop operations. So therefore, back in 1983, our CEO, his father, so our CEO, Otto Lathy, his father is one of the founders of the Geopolymer, and that's where GeoBear originated from. So we are the founders of the Geopolymer, and we take great pride in that, and we have decades of experience in what we do and how we do things. Obviously, technology continues to advance. Since 1983, we have brought and developed new geopolymers. And again, I'll go into a little bit more detail shortly when we talk about the geopolymers. So where are GeoBear and whereabouts are we in the world? So we operate globally, as I've alluded to. We're active throughout the USA, Sweden, Finland, China, Poland, and currently opened up our new in the UAE. We don't hide the UK is our biggest operational at this stage, but again, we continue to improve people's lives, shall we say, on a global offset. So we have a worldwide reach and outreach in what GeoBear can support and offer. So today we are talking about residential, but GeoBear do operate in all different sectors, from highways to commercial properties to ports and harbours to railways, airports, energy and utilities. Again, today is about the residential side, so working with them sectors from insurance to social housing developers and private residential clients. But nonetheless, I will go through some case studies on what we can do on different sectors throughout the UK. So, where do we specialise? What is our, the areas that we specialise in? So we're a solution for subsidence and settlement for residential, commercial and infrastructure projects, which we operate in different areas of ground improvement. So properties that have suffered with subsidence down to drainage failure, to, again, clay shrinkage solutions. So again, as I've alluded to, within the volume of geopolymers that we operate on, each individual project is reviewed and engineering have an input in that. Again, within our in-house design teams, so primarily we operate within ground improvement, slab stabilisation, so slabs that are showing signs of compaction issues or movement, we can actually stabilise and re-level flooring. And then obviously structural support, where we can present structural report to, again, differentials of different subsoils, from clays, cohesive soils to granular to peat, and so on and so forth. And lastly, the void filling aspects. So where voids have appeared, typically, again, just for one project that we're working on at the moment, is a new build property. Unfortunately, the drainage has moved downwards. We've gone back to, again, put that drainage back to where it should be with our bespoke engineering experience and endeavours. We do offer significant reassurances in what we do, and I will go into a little bit more detail later on within some certifications, insurance-backed guarantees, warranties, and such like that. Again, reassurance is there for a reason, but primarily we are accredited by the BBA, and we take great pride in that. and primarily we are a well-known brand in what we execute and do. So what I'd like to just quickly go over is, again, the introduction of geopolymer materials. We have a volume of different geopolymers as market leader that, again, react differently within different subsoils. So again, from different techniques that we operate in, from ground stabilization to slab stabilization to, again, ground improvement, and so on. Typically, our geopolymer is based on multi-component structural resin technology, which especially has been developed for ground engineering applications. Again, alternative ground improvements from piling to conventional underpinning. The geopolymer undergoes, so primarily the geopolymer is two components which primarily hit each other and have a chemical reaction, which introduces it starts its early life as a liquid, and then very quickly it becomes a solid and solidifies with increased volume of dynamic energy, and it has an expansion force. I think it's important, and which I will show you in a second, a video where you'll see that it starts its life off as a liquid, starts to have a chemical reaction, and then again the expansion force very quickly is clear. The chemical reaction is very quick, resulting in defined physical and mechanical characteristics. The geopolymer reaches 90% of its final mechanical characteristics within less than 15 minutes. But once the liquid is entered, the geopolymer is entered into the ground, within 30 to 60 seconds, the reaction starts and primarily starts to expand. As a result, the carefully selected high-quality geopolymer components have over 30 years of research and development. And again, GeoBear continue to utilize our technology and provides a solution in safe environments with prestige control. And again, I want to talk later on a little bit more of how that looks when we're actually treating a property. So the specialist geopolymer ground injection, it expands 5 to 30 times its liquid state and volume. It strengthens weak soils and below structures. So there's no need for excavation. We start from ground level and inject below foundations, so to speak. 95% of the strengths are achieved within 30 to 60 seconds from injection, and it is done in a controlled manner. We can lift foundations and slabs, multi-story properties, primarily, again, and I want to stress this, the importance of, again, every single project is individual. It is safer and greener process than alternatives. And again, I'll go into that in a second on our carbon footprint, but primarily, again, the two different components automatically mixed on site will then present, again, a enhanced movement. So this is where I want to actually just show you, if I may, the process of how it starts its life. So Alistair, if you can just show the video, if you don't mind. So this is typically, again, it starts off as a liquid format. It's very quickly has a chemical reaction, as you can see, and it starts to expand. Now, again, the differential within geopolymers and how our geopolymers work, again, we have significant different numbers of geopolymers, and they react differently within different subsoils. So primarily within that aspect, thank you, Alistair, you can go back to the slide. Within that aspect, when we're going through our understanding of what is the main cause or the triage of subsidence, we will specifically, bespokely review the analytic data that we get to then present which geopolymer that we want to have during treatment. And again, I'll touch on that slightly in a second. The properties of the geopolymer, so it's rapid hardening. Again, it's 10 to 5 times lighter than your typical concrete or grout, respectively. Primarily, therefore, we're not adding more weight compression to the ground or the underside foundations. It is a water-free solution, so geopolymers do not require water for its curing or hardening process. And like, again, I've talked about the rapid hardening, and equally, again, within 15 minutes of injection, it has cured and becomes it's geopolymer property of a hardened process. Again, what's very important to ourselves within that, and again, you've heard me talk about it throughout, is our carbon footprint. So we had some analytic understanding of through Carbon Footprint Limited, undertook an independent excuse me, assessment of our geopolymer or geopolymers injections, and it produces in the region of around 53 to 90% less carbon footprint compared to grouting or compared to conventional or mass concrete. Now, I can't be specific on the percentage because, again, the geopolymers or the volume of geopolymers we have here at Geobar are different. So therefore, I'm trying to give you some form of scale, but 53 to 90%. Each year, Geobar, again, calculates its own operation carbon footprint, and we offset that with CO2 in the ways of improved sustainable development projects around the world. And we take great pride in that. And again, we are forever, like most reputable and good companies should be, looking at carbon footprint throughout as a whole. So, residential subsidence, and I am going to go into detail of how our journey looks, but primarily what the guys, or my guys who work for me, are trained to look at are the signs of subsidence. Again, working with multiple different organisations, from insurers to social housing companies to, again, private residential clients. So again, we're looking at direction and of cracks. We're looking for the categorization of cracks to, again, follow a triage of solution. Door frames, windows that are sticking. We're looking also for settlement, historic movement, equally to accelerated movement due to, again, from anything from drainage failure to, again, anything that potentially is causing the root of subsidence. During our site visits, we're looking, again, not just at the specific area of concern. For example, rear elevation outrigger is showing signs of movement, cracking. We're reviewing the whole property to understand and undertake what is required to give that level of expertise and service that we expect here at Geobar. Again, areas that we are looking for is separation, rotation of extensions, rippling within wallpaper, and again, level surveys are carried out to understand scope of potential movement throughout the whole footprint of that property. Again, without boring you, what are the main causes of subsidence in the UK? Shrinkable clays. Again, what we've seen in the last 7 years is what we call two surges, where primarily we've had heat waves that had taken out the moisture out of the subsoils and soils, and heave and shrinkable clays are becoming more and more habitable within the UK. Tree root activity playing part of that as well, so nearby trees and vegetation extracting the moisture out of the ground. So again, during our site visits, we're looking at around not only the footprint of the property, but perimeter of the property, including and understanding differentials within trees from oaks to maples to understand what we call low to high risk. Water leaks in the UK. As we know, in the UK, a lot of properties being built early 1900s, 1930s, 1960s, that more than likely, until a drain survey has been carried out, we're making an assumption that they will be potted drains that more than likely will have some form of defects. So we're very keen to equally understand location and condition of drainage. So water leaks is a prime example of what we deal with every day here at Geobar, and what is causing the subsidence. Mining and historical excavations. again, bespokely, we'll review and we're underlining, the footprint of the property prior to property being built. So again, we're looking at historic mappings to understand what potentially was there before the house was built, and then latterly construction work. So nearby digging, piling, disturbing soil stability, equally vibration, and so on and so forth. That is potentially the cause of subsidence. So within that aspect, primarily, what is the difference between GeoBare and conventional? And we call that early intervention, and typical life cycle reduction is in the region of around 75%. From when a client comes to GeoBare to when we do the initial site visit with, again, a dedicated a manager that will review what potentially is happening at the property, to then further investigation works from site investigation to drain survey to dynamic comb procedures, to then presenting with what we call the final stage quotation and proposal of design with then treatment. So typically, conventional underpinning could take anything between 2 to 4 months, if not longer. The life cycle with GeoBare is that we could be on site on the Monday and completed the works on the Tuesday. Therefore, 2 days in comparison to 3, 4, 5, or 6 months against comparative conventional underpinning techniques. Again, from when initial project comes to us to when we present insurance-backed guarantees and certifications, looking on typically 15 weeks. That can be a lot quicker. We don't hide that. Again, we are a business that will review and work with all our clients. So how does it work? Again, I briefly touched on this. A area manager will visit the property, or we'll have a virtual site visit with the client to initially understand potential issues that they're facing. On a number of private residential projects, we're actually reviewing a customer's property where they're, for example, showing signs of cracking at the front elevation. We'll go throughout the whole property and identify other cracking that the client hasn't seen. So it's, again, part and parcel of our safety mechanism. We're looking at services and where services are coming into the property or building. We're also looking at measurements and taking significant volumes of evidence to then ascertain what potential next steps are. As you'll be able to see from our Google reviews, on occasion, at that stage, we can advise the client that at this stage, we're not seeing any potential issues and advising them to monitor, or we're going to next step of further investigation. Primarily, further investigation is extremely important because we're triaging what the potential problem is, and that is undertaken by, again, site investigations, trowel pits and boreholes to understand foundation size, depth, equally understanding the subsoils and the analytic understanding of what them subsoils look at, and I'll go through that again in a second. Typically, we will do dynamic comb procedures to understand the resistance of them subsoils, particularly within granular, but primarily we're understanding and ascertaining the makeup and the current subsoils of potentially the issues that are potentially coming to light. That stage will also go through and advise about drain surveys, and again, I'll touch on that in a second, but site investigation is so important and thorough for us to underline and ascertain, again, foundation depths, but the analytic understanding of what the makeup of them foundations are. That stage, we post site investigation, we will be able to understand the makeup of them foundations, the area of concern, and again, taking into consideration plasticity, water index, equally on that aspect as well, tree roots and other trees playing a part in it. Understanding desiccation, so that's allowing us then to bespoke put a treatment together for a resolution, which is again governed by insurance-backed guarantees and such. We then present the client with a engineered treatment plan, and we call this a trio of expertise. So at this stage, area manager is putting a design together for the the solution to the underlying issue. That then is reviewed by our in-house engineering department, and at that stage, more information may be required. But once approved, it will then go on to another area of expertise where we'll be checking the area manager's excuse me, the area manager's solution to the engineered solution, to again be ensuring that the correct triage and understanding of what we do is there. At that stage, then primarily, we're now understanding that we're in a position to present the client with a quotation. But again, like I've talked about, it's the drain survey that is also very important, because understanding location conditions of drainage is very important to us at GeoBar, mainly because one thing that we don't hide behind is that we do not want our geopolymer to enter the drainage system. If it does, we have an isolated area of time to get the geopolymer out of the drainage system before it sets. One thing we do not want to be doing, as you can understand, is block people's drains. At that stage, then, full triage has been completed and a solution is in place, and we go through a full client education process of our findings, from particularly what the problem was, the investigation works, so the triage underlining how we resolve that, excuse me, to present them a personalised improvement recommendation, and therefore at that stage it is ready for GeoBar to present its solution to the client. So again, moving on to the next steps. As I've alluded to, we present significant reassurance, again the BBA accreditation, but we also present an insurance-backed guarantee. That's a 10-year insurance-backed guarantee that is underwritten by a third party, a 10-year company warranty, and lastly, a certificate of structural adequacy. The reassurances are there for the client, and equally the resolution of a subsidence issue has been resolved. So how do we deliver it? How in comparison to conventional underpinning do we come out on site and treat properties? Our drilling teams, our technicians who work towards HABS calculations, so safety is paramount. But primarily, what we are actually doing is treating the ground beneath foundations, and we utilise that by drilling first and foremost into the ground and to the underside of the foundation, and then erecting the steel into the ground, which is then going to what specific depths that we require. For a typical residential property, that can go down to 5 meters. But primarily at that stage, the steel that we're putting into the ground has no engineering impact on what we're doing, only to allow us to get our geopolymer to the underside of the foundation or to the depth of treatment that we require. During this process, it is controlled, and communication is ongoing through the teams, from the injection pump to, again, the treatment area. And then during injections, we're monitoring lift or the movement of the structure using rotating laser levels. And again, our main objective is ground stabilization, but we are in a position to lift properties back to where potentially they were. But again, we are going for ground improvement to resolve the stabilization issue. We do significant testing, specifically within granular, where we'll do pre and post DCPs, which is showing the improvement of the grounds pre our treatment and post our treatment. And then obviously, it again is reviewed via an engineer post-treatment. So very unique way. And again, in comparison to conventional underpinning, as I've alluded to, we're normally on site for 1 to 2 days against 3 to 4 months. So what I think is important, just to give you a couple of case studies on different sectors that we've dealt with. We solved a problem in the London Borough. Primarily, GBER delivered a solution with a single team over a 1 week period. There was a block of flats with multiple tenants in the property. There was trees surrounding the block of flats. So again, from start of customer journey, again, triage, understanding, resolution, the sustainability benefits and the speed of delivery were a key part in the decision making of the council, because again, they had tenants that were living in the properties and they stayed in situ. The case study from the London Borough Council actually showed and reported savings in excess of £500,000, and again changed their whole route of procurement. Primarily, again, safety is paramount, but nonetheless, clients were able to stay in the properties and go about the day-to-day activities as normal under our guidance of safety, obviously. Another project was actually in Bristol. We had again, multiple occupancy property that was suffering with subsidence. Local authority gained approval to get a 100-year-old plus oak tree removed, which was at the side elevation. That unfortunately made other people having issues with the removal of the tree. So we was approached to see what we could do. We were mobilised. Fortunately, we had all investigation work, so the client did, and we mobilised very promptly. And it took us in the region of 3 days to inject. The problematic thing with this particular project is you had a block of, again, flats with a driveway to the side elevation where the treatment was being undertaken. And at the rear elevation, you had all the parking. So access would have been a significant issue with conventional underpinning. And therefore, we worked around it, made it safe for an evening for cars to pass and park up at the rear. It did have a lot of public eye interest. It was on the BBC news site. Equally, the mayor announced a win for all parties on Facebook. And like I said, the policyholder and the people that were the tenants that were in the properties stayed and were not affected by any access. Last one I'd like to share is again a social housing client that was in Leicester. 1900 builds with outriggers, rear elevation, obviously. Parking was a significant issue on these multiple properties. We had 24 different properties that we delivered within 26 days. Again, occupants, tenants stayed in properties during our treatment. We delivered this over a 5-week period. Again, as I alluded to, the parking was an issue, but we worked around that to ensure that we could deliver in a timely manner. And this actually was, again, it's a case study on our website, but primarily we continue to work directly with this particular housing association. What's extremely important to us throughout this whole process, and again, as I alluded to earlier, it is an education process. Every single project is individual and bespoke. So again, it's tailored and reviewed and goes into detail. But feedback from our clients is extremely important as well. Again, earlier I alluded to, we average between 15 and 25 projects per week delivered. So again, the feedback of our clients is extremely important. So again, that goes through our Trustpilot. We equally work extremely hard on our NPS to underline and understand, you know, from promoters to positives to deflectors. Primarily, again, we pride ourselves on our overall service. We work with multiple different organisations and continue to not only sustain where Geopolymer are today, but our growth pattern is extremely aggressive. We don't hide that. We continue to be the best at what we do. So at this stage, we're happy to get any questions.
Thank you, Craig. Hopefully that sort of was easy to digest for everyone. I think it's pretty clear and concise. Please type in any questions you have. There's a couple come through. So Craig, I'll see if I can bring these up on the screen. No. Let's see. Okay, so this not directly related to subsidence, but maybe a technical question, Craig. But can the product be used for waterproofing internal retaining walls, eye steps between walls, and injected behind the walls?
My answer to that, again, it depends on, again, the individual project. The answer is yes, but again, the triage and understanding of that particular dwelling or retaining wall is extremely important. So we do that within our initial triage, which I want to stress, we do not charge for. So the early consultation that we have is a free service that we provide.
Absolutely, and our material, and we do provide a water sealing solution. So we've done this at Oxford Railway Station. We've done it in between Sheffield, Abbeydale, Hamlet. There was a reservoir and water was leaking into their historic museum. So we injected in between the reservoir and the walls of this 18th century museum to prevent that water migrating. So water sealing is something we do, but it'll be a case-by-case thing, as Craig says, managers. So thanks for that question. So we have one from Joe. When using a geopolymer to stabilize a clay soil suffering from shrinkage, how does the solution prevent the building suffering heave during a long period of prolonged wet weather if the clay underneath starts to expand?
Very good question. And primarily, again, it's dependable on the makeup of them subsoils. As I alluded to earlier, we have a volume of different geopolymers. And again, bespokely, we will review each project to find the correct solution.
Yeah, and having the benefit of being running a couple of webinars with our Vice President of Engineering, Andy Lee. In fact, we'll be doing a clay-specific webinar in April, so I recommend you join that, Joe. But my understanding is that the moisture in the soil is extracted to the degree that heave could not occur because there's no capacity for that clay soil to actually swell. So what our clay soil solution does is minimize that capacity, the sponginess, if you like, of the clay. So, but I'll send a link out to everyone following this with links to future webinars, including that clay one, Joe. So look out for that. Then we've got a question from Dayosh. Can you provide some ideas of the cost involved for domestic house remediation works, such as typical semi-detached stock in the UK? Well, tough one, but over to you, Craig.
Yeah, so, well, it depends on the size of the property and the area of particular concern. So we deal with everything from porches to just front elevation, side elevation to rear elevation outriggers. Your cost range is my answer. It depends on the scope of work and the depth of treatment. Typically, a porchway could be anything from £3,000 to a rear elevation, hypothetically speaking, conservatory that is in the region of around £8,000 to repair. It is, again, hard to answer. You're right, Alistair, because primarily it depends on the triage, the understanding and the root cause, and equally foundation size and depth to equally, again, then the depth of treatment that is required. We ascertain and we work to understand what is the main core of the issue, from anything from poor foundations or inadequate foundations to, again, drainage failure, to shrinkable clays, to a granular. So again, it is a very good question. It is hard to answer, but again, it is on the triage and understanding what the cause or where the area or linear meterage of treatment is required.
Yeah, and I think basically it's comparable with sort of traditional underpinning, but what you've got to realise is the benefits. You're not moving customers out, residents out of the property, and especially one of those cases earlier that Craig mentioned about the flats. They had disabled people living in the flats, and the nightmare it would be for them to actually have to be moved out because you're doing an underpinning solution. So the best thing to do, actually, Dash, is to just contact us separately, and one of our area managers could give you a sort of a budget quote by doing an online visit, which we mentioned earlier. So that if you want us to do that, we can get in touch with you to do that afterwards. Tony asks, what is the diameter of the injection tube and what pressure is the geopolymer installed at? So Craig, do you have the specific answers?
Well, you're looking in the region of around 6 mil. Again, the injection tube has no engineering impact, and on the majority of occasions is extracted during treatment. The pressure, again, changes within different subsoils. Primarily, again, we are reviewing and watching during treatment any potential change on the superstructure or the foundations of movement of the property. But yeah, 6 mil holes. We treat differently within clay to granular. So for example, in clay soils, we treat at every 0.5 centers, so 0.5 around the perimeter, 0.5 below foundation. So again, granular soils where it's at every meter. And that's, again, great question down to the pressure of the geopolymer that is installed, and equally how the geopolymer reacts and expands. Yeah,
and I don't know the exact bar pressure, Tony. I don't have it in front of me, but it is variable. But we can give you the exact numbers on an email afterwards. We don't have any engineering guys on hand because we're both actually working from home today, so we can ask the question. So then we go over to Manjeet. Who do I need to contact for either war? Contact me, Manjeet. We can pick that up offline. If you look at, you'll get an email with my email address after this meeting. So just reply to that.
Our customer service details will be on that email as well. Primarily, again, the journey always starts with our customer service to collect all the information to then be presented with a allocated area manager.
Yep, thanks, Craig. Amro, can geopolymer be used to stabilize sandy, silty soil?
100%. So primarily, again, we have 21 different geopolymers that react differently within subsoils, from anything, again, from cohesive clay, soft to hard, stiff, to granular soils. Equally, again, we can review subsoils that are peat. Again, it depends on the triage and understanding of what's happening. But yeah, we can stabilize sandy, silty soils.
Okay, cheers, Craig. And then Gareth, is the triage stage all carried out externally with no impact internally?
Very good question. Again, it depends on area of treatment and scope of treatment to, again, the triage of understanding. So the majority of occasions it is external, but as you can imagine, if it's a slab, that will be internal. It does depend upon the makeup of the building and equally access. So if we've got very narrow access where we cannot operate safely, then it would be, again, moved internally. But I'm going to answer it honestly as best as I can, Gareth. You're looking at between 80 to 90% is always external. It does depend on the uniquity of the project.
Okay, another question from Joe. GeoBear offer a 10-year insurance-backed guarantee. So does the product begin to degrade after a number of years? And if a building is demolished at a much later date, how difficult is it to remove the geopolymer? Does it need to be disposed of in a way that does not cause harm to the environment?
So several questions in one there. So GeoBear do offer a 10-year insurance-backed guarantee. Primarily, that's more of a reassurance. Primarily, that is on the workmanship, the geopolymer and the design. Tests have equally been done on when does the geopolymer start to decay. Scientifically, it's over 100 years. We cannot give a true reflection on the geopolymer because, again, we invented it over 40 years, but scientifically and all case studies are stipulating 100 years plus.
Yeah, and in terms of the disposal, it would be it's a standard disposal. It's environmentally inert is a phrase we use. So and this is approved. It's used by the Environment Agency for use on riversides and so on. So it's the material itself is not a massive problem. and it's basically easy to be dug out as well. So we do use this in some void filling jobs, for example, culverts under roads. If they don't want a permanent sort of concrete or cementitious based fill, they would use ours because it's easier to dig out afterwards. So hopefully that answers those questions, Joe, getting your money's worth there. So Tony, so a similar question. Is there any caveats to the 10-year warranty though, Craig?
It again depends on the uniquety of the project. Very rarely there are caveats. So we do on occasion, and which we don't hide, where clients do not want to undertake a site investigation, especially when we're in clays with nearby trees. We want site investigation works. On occasion, clients do not want that. Therefore, we will caveat that and equally not present a 10-year insurance guarantee.
Yeah, cheers, Craig. Michael has used GeoBear previously. Great to hear, Michael. So you know the answer, but for the benefit of others, yeah, good question. What access requirements do we need as GeoBear to undertake the work? So clearance widths, haul rows, ground bearing, etc.
So we have several different vehicles, from the best way I'm going to say it, from trucks to vans. We have done several projects that are extremely rural. Area of clearance is 1 metre to allow us to work safely. Again, what is ascertained and understood during video site visit is access. If we're working obviously around the perimeter of the property, we do want clearance of anything from, vegetation that could cause harm and impact safety. Primarily, again, within every single project, we will review and advise accordingly.
Yeah, and as Craig mentioned, we have a scheduling team that looks at access. So we the smaller size vehicle uses a sprinter to get through tight lanes. Obviously, if there are sort of almost U-shaped bends in roads in rural areas, like Craig said, that can be an issue. But our hoses extend to over 100 meters, so usually we'd find a solution, I think, to those issues. But great question, Michael. Thanks for raising that one. And then looks like the last one is Manjit once more. Can this be used to improve the bearing capacity of soil to support a piling rig instead of using stone piling mat? And is it cheaper?
So again, it's a very hard question to answer. This depends on the understanding and equally the information that we're gathering. The answer is yes, we can improve the bearing capacity of the soil to support a piling rig. However, we need to underline and understand the ground conditions, the resistance of soils with investigation works or any information that you've currently got. But the answer is yes.
Yeah, exactly. And I think if the soil, like Craig says, is particularly bad, we have these things called power piles, which are ultimately geopolymer in like a big tube that goes through into, say, the peat material. So potentially manage it may be an option. I don't know if it'd necessarily be cheaper than a stone piling mat, to be honest. That's being as transparent as I can on that one. But that looks like it's all the questions, Craig. So I really appreciate you running through the presentation for everyone. I hope everyone's taken some insights from that. And once this closes, you'll see my email address be linked to a thank you for attending message. So if you've got any other questions, come to me directly. And if you need a CPD certificate for the session, also just reply to that email and I'll make sure one gets sent out to you. So I think that's it. So thanks, Craig. Look out for future webinars and appreciate you joining. Thanks again.
Thank you. Take care.